Hello and welcome to this episode of Building the Canna Guitar. And today I'm gonna talk a little bit about the top of my guitar, so the bracing and everything that goes into it. And first I'm gonna talk about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and so you get a better understanding why I'm making all this funky stuff with the double top and everything, and a little bit my reasoning behind it and how I came to do it like that. So first, my guitars. I started out building the first guitar was like a traditional kind of fan brace guitar with like the sound hole in the middle, and yeah, it worked out quite okay, but I wasn't really satisfied with it. The second guitar was a typical X-Brace guitar. I built with another luthier together, so this was like my bachelor thesis, and it worked out quite well. But I never really was satisfied with the result, and always thought I could kind of push a little bit further. And I'm not the kind of guy that just takes like a plan that I found on the internet and kind of try to copy it. And also my guitars, they are quite different in because they don't have the sound hole in the middle. So you see, normally you got like a huge hole in the middle here, and I'm gonna explain why that's like, in my opinion, not such a great idea. And it's all comes down to the construction and the stability of the top. So when you look at the main, so it all comes down to the rigidity and the stiffness and the weight of the top. So these are like the main things you have to concern. So the weight of the top. You have to imagine like the strings. They are not very heavy. They're like a couple of grams, and the top is much heavier. It's like 10 times heavier, and so you want to get like this balance. So on classical guitar, it's much more. The strings are even less weight, and this little bit of weight, and you have like this very tiny bit of energy you put in with the strings. Like in contrary to like in violin, where you can put in as much energy basically as you want, and on a guitar you really have this finite amount of energy, and you want to really make good use of it. So your main concern is to make the top as light as possible, so the energy gets much better converted into sound. And then you want to have the top to be quite flexible, so it actually can move. So imagine you have like a guitar top that's made out of graphite or something that's like weighing nothing but is super stiff. You're not gonna have like a very great sound, because it's gonna be very bright and you don't have any bass response. And so that's like the two main parts, and then the third part is like the how you construct the top, and how you get to move, like in these three. There are like three main top modes. They call it like top modes. So the first mode is like the bass response. It's like when the top is moving, like the whole top is moving up and down. And then it's like the second mode. That's when the bridge is kind of tilting like this, and it's like the cross grain movement. And the third movement is like when the bridge is like this, and it's rocking like this. Like this is the long grain mode. So those three modes, and it's not always just one. It's like a mixture of all of them, and basically you use the bracing to attack or to steer like the top to activate all the modes. So now to the first point, how to reduce the weight of the top. So my tops are basically like this. So I'm using these double top construction, and I use this Nomex stuff. And the Nomex is like a honeycomb structure, and the main thing about it doesn't weigh anything. So it's like super strong in like you can't push it down, but it's very flexible, and yeah, it doesn't add any weight. And if you look closer to this piece, that's like an intersection of the top, and in the middle I got this Nomex, and this is like a little bit or much more thicker than normally. So these two pieces up and down there are both like 2 millimeters, and normally they are like about 1 millimeter. So you got like in the middle this 1 millimeter Nomex, and then the millimeter on top and on the bottom. And it's like in the middle I got 3 millimeters, and to the sides I take off the Nomex, and it's fading down. So yeah, it's much thinner on the sides, mainly to get like this monopole movement. And the whole reason is like to reduce the weight. And I weighted a guitar once, or a top, before and after I glued on the Nomex, and the Nomex is like 7 grams for the whole guitar. And when you compare it to the whole weight of a normal top weights like, or my tops weight about like 100 to 110 grams, and like with the double top. And if you wouldn't have the double top, you would have to add like a third on top of that, so it would be like 140 grams. So that's quite a lot, because it's like as much as the bridge, and the bridge is quite a heavy part of the guitar, and you also try to get like a really light material for the bridge. Like on this one I got I'm using plum. So so that's basically where I'm using the Nomex. And the second problem is that the you need to have like the flexibility of the top, but you need to have also the stiffness to withstand the pull of the strings. So the pull of the strings on a acoustic guitar, like a steel string guitar, can be like 100 kilograms, and that's quite a lot for like this 3 millimeter thin, or on the sides 2 millimeter thin spruce top. And the normal way you get like the stiffness for the top is you kind of put a piece of wood underneath, and it's called a brace. And the whole idea behind the brace is when you got a piece of wood that's like flat on the one side and high on the other, like on the flat side it's very flexible, but when you tilt it around to the high side, it's like can't even bend it. It's like 20 times stiffer, and it's called the cube rule. And the cube rule says when you got it like 20% thicker, it's like a little bit thicker, it's twice as stiff. So when you imagine this is like 3 times as high as it's flat, yeah, you do the math. And that's like normally how you do the bracings. You put like upright pieces of wood underneath there, and it stiffens up the top a lot, and you got enough stiffness to withstand the pull of the strings. But the problem with that is that yeah, it gets quite stiff. And as I told you just before, I don't want the top to be too stiff, because I don't get this nice monopole bass response. So when you got a material and you make it very stiff and light, it's gonna sound very bright. And when you gotta make it loose and more to the heavy side, it's gonna be more on the bass response. You can just take different materials and knock on it, and like carbon fiber sounds very light, like a very light bell. And if you use like the same size of, let's say, some flexible wood, like some spruce, it's much more much more deeper. And so that's like the problem, how to get the top to stand, to pull off the strings without making it too stiff. And I also use my double top construction in a kind of different way than normally. Normally you kind of have like have it like straight, put the no mix in the middle, and then glue it with the braces so it has like a little bit of a dome. And I do it a little bit different way, so I hope you can see it, but the my tops have kind of a wave in it. And I'm gonna show you later on like a little jig I built. When you have the pull of the strings, it normally tends to create like the opposite shape. So it's when it's pulling like this, in this direction, it's pushing down here and raising up here. So I thought, why not just laminate the top, that it's like in the exact opposite fashion. So yeah, and as I'm using the double top, I'm gonna laminate it anyways, and so I'm laminating it into this counter wave. And as you're gonna see in a minute, it's balancing it out. So it's kind of pushing up here and pulling down there, and it's ending up like a quite straight line. So when you look at the guitar right here, you see it's quite straight top. It doesn't have like a much of an arch in it or something. And yeah, it's basically what I did here. It's got a dish in here and a little bit of a dome up here, and the pull of the strings kind of even it out. And it's kind of pulling it up a little bit, but I make up for it by inserting the neck in a right angle, and also like if you're familiar with my guitars, I got systems in place to change the neck angle like a little bit and fine tune the action of the guitar. So yeah, that's basically how I make my tops, and as you can see, they're quite flexible. So it's not, I'm not making the guitar much stiffer. I'm making it like it's like not a stiff bracing, but like a spring, like a loaded spring, and the spring is like much more flexible, and it's like a super loud, super bassy sound. Of course, on this one I got like the fan frets, so it's very and like very thick strings, and you got really like the nice bass, and that's what I was looking for. So I'm now going to show you a little bit on a fixture how how this is working, and I hope it helps a little bit to understand why I'm doing it and how it all fits together. Okay, so this is the mold I made, and I inserted a piece of like the same as I just showed you, but this one is just straight. So to kind of demonstrate what would happen if you don't have a bracing at all, and there's no tension on it right now, and I'm gonna mark the line of the of the top, and now I'm gonna increase the tension. Not too much. And you can see it's pushing it down here in front of the bridge, and on the back, yeah, it's not that much, but because it's not as long here, but yeah, it kind of makes this S-curve. And also it's kind of pushing it like the bridge location down. So normally it would even push it down a little bit more, because you would have a negative neck angle, unlike this one right here. But yeah, I would push it down like a little bit more. And yeah, so that would happen on a normal guitar. And also because of the bracings, the main stiffness point of the top is right in front of the bridge. So that's like the X-brace meeting here. And that would also push it up. So it's gonna kind of, it's like something on there, and it's gonna tilt. And that's gonna actually, with the bracing, raise the bridge. And you maybe know from very old guitars, or like some 12-string guitars, that at some point they have to shave down the bridge, because it's coming up and it's not stiff enough, and then it gives in, and you want to compensate it by getting the bridge down. At some point you can't do it, and you have to reset the neck. So now I want to show you the model for my tops. Okay, so this is now my the construction for the double top in the counter wave fashion. So when I increase the tension here, you can see it's also going to push it down, but it's kind of flattening out here. And the reason why it's pushing it down so much here is because of the neck angle. So normally you see that my strings are pulling like more like this from the top, and that's where like my negative or like my positive neck angle comes into play. So it all kind of evens out. So I think when you're gonna do it on a normal guitar with like a slightly negative neck angle, it wouldn't quite work as well. You would have to adjust a little bit. Also, normally you got like the braces underneath here, and the same effect comes to play, so it kind of pushes it up here a little bit. And yeah, so you can see it's basically straight in the end. And yeah, it kind of takes the pressure in a different way, and converts it like from this. So it takes the pressure in like in a different way, and makes it able to have like a very flexible top, and not to stiffen up too much, so I don't lose any volume, and like nice bass response and everything. And I'm gonna you're gonna still see that I gonna install some braces underneath, and they are mainly for the sound. So for these three modes I've been talking about, and I'm gonna use a avant-guarde bracing, and it's a little bit of a different bracing, and it's quite interesting, because it's more like a fan bracing fashion. So the braces are more like in this direction, and not, you don't have like this big cross. And I think it fits very well for my guitars, because the X bracing, so the main job of the X bracing is to compensate for the hole in the top. So the X bracing is very stiff in front of the bridge, and it compensates for the lack of material here. And because I don't have a sound hole here, I got an offset sound hole or two, I don't need to make it so stiff right here. So on my X-Brace guitars, I also kind of scallop them down on this part where it's normally would be too stiff. And this also works quite well, but I think for car bracing, yeah, I'm not really sure what's better. It's like a different kind of approach, a little bit of different sound. Both works, and yeah, for this one I'm going to use the for car bracing. And yeah, so I hope it helps a little bit understanding how I construct my tops and the neck angle and everything. Yeah, that's kind of weird on my guitars, and I hope you find it useful and enjoy the rest of the build of the guitar top.